Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Explainer. Today, we're taking on some incredibly complex, high-stakes geopolitical dynamics and translating them into clear, actionable intelligence. I'm your host, and as an objective analyst, I've got to tell you, today's briefing, sourced directly from an exclusive report by sonophiles.com, is an absolute eye-opener. We're going to decode the real leverage at play in the US-Iran conflict. And honestly, the conventional wisdom is missing the big picture here. Let's dive right in.
To kick things off, listen to this brilliant analogy from Alan Iyer. He was actually part of the U.S. team negotiating the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. He says, and I quote, "The nuclear issue is honestly Betamax now. You know, like those clunky, obsolete videotapes from the 70s? It perfectly hits the nail on the head. For years, everybody's been hyper-focused on centrifuges and enriched uranium, but according to sources close to the table, that whole angle is practically ancient history. It's a massive paradigm shift. Instead of arguing over what Iran will give up, the real deadlock is entirely about what they're demanding to get."
So, what's the bottom line according to the sonophiles.com report? Well, it's money. Plain and simple. The ultimate leverage, the absolute core reason this conflict is stuck in the mud, centers completely around economic survival. They aren't stalled over nuclear sites anymore, they're stalled over purse strings. And to really grasp why, we have to look at how modern battles are actually fought.
Section 1. Economic Statecraft, the Financial Battlefield.
Let's talk about economic statecraft. Essentially, it's waging financial warfare. It's using the sheer, unmatched power of the U.S. financial system to totally cripple an opposing economy without ever firing a single bullet. And it worked. The U.S. Treasury used this to send Iran's currency into absolute freefall. But here's the catch, and this is a huge trap. By running such an aggressive and successful financial war, the U.S. basically boxed itself into a corner. Because now, reversing any of those sanctions to secure peace is a complete political minefield. Just to give you an idea of the scale we're talking about here, think about this number, $100 billion. By some estimates, that is the total value of Iranian assets currently frozen around the world. To put that into perspective, that's almost a quarter of Iran's entire gross domestic product. It's a staggering amount of leverage just sitting there, completely out of Tehran's reach. Let's actually break those murky numbers down a bit. We've got $6 billion just sitting in escrow accounts over in Qatar. Then you've got reports from Axios pointing to a U.S. offer to unfreeze $20 billion if Iran gives up its enriched uranium stockpile. And then there's that estimated total of up to $100 billion, a lot of which is just oil revenue locked up in places like South Korea, Japan, and Europe. This is literally the financial ransom at the heart of the whole standoff.
Section 2. The $300 billion mountain. Reconstruction versus survival.
Now, if $100 billion in frozen assets sounds like a lot, wrap your head around this one, $300 billion. That represents the estimated economic damage caused by U.S. and Israeli airstrikes on the Islamic Republic. Any quick cash Iran scraped together by selling oil at a premium during the conflict, it's completely wiped out by this massive mountain of destruction.
So, Iran is facing this brutal dilemma: short-term survival versus long-term reconstruction. On one hand, they desperately need liquid cash and those covert oil sales just to keep the lights on right now. But on the other hand, Iranian economists are staring down the barrel of at least a 12-year rebuild. They don't just need a quick payout. They need a functioning, normal economy. They need to trade openly, build manufacturing jobs, and really shore up domestic support after all this conflict.
Section 3. The Tactical Board. Paths to Compensation.
Former negotiator Alan Iyer actually maps out 4 specific paths for compensation. Think of these like a high-stakes menu of options. 1. Straight-up reparations for damages. 2. Setting up a tolling system in the Strait of Hormuz. 3. Unblocking all those frozen assets we just talked about. And 4. Complete, total sanctions relief. Now, out of all these, the absolute most volatile and heavily debated is option number 2.
Section 4. The checkmate scenario, the Hormuz toll dispute.
Let's switch gears for a second and zoom out. We've been super focused on the US and Iran, but to really get why this is deadlocked, you have to look at the broader Arab Gulf context. Why are regional neighbors so incredibly opposed to Iran collecting a toll in the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, the sonophiles.com report lays it out pretty starkly. First off, the UAE, Bahrain, and Kuwait flat out refused to let Iran act as the gatekeeper for such a critical global waterway. Second, the U.S., echoed by officials like Secretary of State Marco Rubio, has made it crystal clear they won't tolerate Iran dictating who gets to use the strait or charging them for it. It would just cause endless chaotic friction. But the most fascinating part?
The neighbors aren't just complaining, they are actively building workarounds. Iraq, for instance, is literally trucking oil out to Syria's coast and expanding pipeline capacity up to Turkey, all just to bypass the strait entirely.
Section 5. Reversible sanctions and the trust deficit.
I love how Alan Iyer describes this deep-seated trust deficit. He says it's like giving away the family jewels for something that can be taken away. Iran is absolutely paralyzed by the fear of reversible sanctions as a bargaining tool. I mean, they got burned, right? When the U.S. unilaterally pulled out of the JCPOA back in 2015, it left a major scar. Even when that deal was alive, Western and Asian firms were so terrified of secondary U.S. sanctions that they bolted anyway. Iranian companies were left holding the bag with totally worthless contracts. So Tehran knows a signature on a piece of paper does not equal actual economic security.
Which brings us to the final balancing act. It's a huge tug of war. On one side, you have this massive economic prize. Experts say reopening Iran would create the biggest new market for U.S. companies since the fall of the Soviet Union. The upside is huge. But on the flip side, the roadblocks are steep. You've got intense political pushback, especially massive Israeli opposition to giving Tehran any sanctions relief. And back in the U.S., the optics of authorizing, plane loads of cash right before midterm elections, that's politically radioactive. So I want to leave you with this final kind of provocative thought. If economic warfare has genuinely replaced military conflict as the ultimate geopolitical weapon, how in the world do you negotiate a lasting peace when the only real currency that matters is trust? You can freeze assets, you can crash a currency, but you absolutely cannot force someone to trust you. It's a wild paradigm shift, and for sure, this financial standoff is going to be crucial to watch in the coming months. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope breaking this all down has given you a clearer picture of the real leverage at play here. Stay curious, and we'll see you next time.